Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We're really happy to have you here today and to be able to share our story about what happened in 2020 in terms of product transparency and the transparency catalog, and what we're looking forward to in 2021. And the star of this particular webinar is going to be the rollout of our real-time analytics dashboard for manufacturers to be able to understand industry trends and real-time tracking of who's using the transparency catalog and what categories are most interesting and most utilized, and a whole bunch of other stuff that we're going to cover later in this session. So here's what we're going to cover today. For those of you who are new to Sustainable Minds, we'll do a little bit of an intro. Then we're going to look at the growth of product transparency as we've been tracking it in the last 4 years. And then we're going to take a look at what happened in 2020 as we saw in the transparency catalog, which was an interesting year in that I think product transparency really has taken a center stage in design and construction, but also given the shutdown and the way business has changed, digital really is the only way to access information because there aren't trade shows and face-to-face events. So I'm going to show you how that trend impacted the use of the catalog. And then we'll start breaking down the industry, looking at transparency investments by master format, division and section. And then we'll take a look at how we've included new functionality in the transparency catalog in the version 3 rollout in September that has really enhanced the ability to filter and search, which will then give you background for understanding what we're reporting in the analytics dashboard, because we're making all the data that we have available to us to understand what's happening. We're now making that available to manufacturers who have added their products to the catalog. And I'm going to do a very quick tutorial on web metrics and analytics, because there's a lot of numbers that get thrown around when you're talking about analytics. And I think it's important to level set and to agree on what's important to track and count and why, and what maybe isn't so important, so that you can kind of separate the important stuff from the not so much important. So for those of you who are new to Sustainable Minds, I'm Terry Swack. I'm the CEO and founder. Sustainable Minds is really first and foremost a software company, and we were actually the first to define the sustainability software category when we released our eco-concept and LCA software back in 2009, and since then have really been in the industry of making environmental performance more meaningful, understandable, and useful for making decisions both in product development for manufacturers, as well as then in project design for architects, engineers, contractors, and owners. And as we became more focused on the building construction industry in 2012, when LEED v4 was first introduced in draft and introduced the idea of the product transparency credits, because we'd already been in the business of LCA simplification, we said, well, this is great, because the intent was to reward building product manufacturers for performing LCAs on their products and disclosing the environmental performance across the life cycle, which is pretty technical information. It needs a fair amount of simplification and interpretation, even inside of the organization, to understand what it means. And we thought, well, if it's going to be expected that architects, engineers, owners, and contractors be able to make informed and comparative decisions about selecting and specifying products using environmental performance information, then there's a lot of work to do to package that information and deliver it in a way that helps people use it to really make real informed decisions. So we became a program operator so that we could look at how to simplify the product category rule creation process to help standardize and simplify the creation and delivery of EPDs and the content in EPDs. We deliver LCA and material evaluation services because it's pretty critical. If you're going to be simplifying and standardizing something, you better know how to do it the real way with a lot of deep expertise. And but you know, at the end of the day, all of that work to do the PCR, the LCA, the EPD, and now the material ingredient disclosures, those are all activities in service of marketing and selling products. And so without the final piece, a platform that helps manufacturers market and sell their products and to make it super easy for their customers, architects, engineers, contractors, and owners to find those brands who have invested in transparency and be able to make, you know, rapid comparative decisions, then all the work that's been put in up front isn't really getting leveraged to its full effectiveness. And so we are the only really end-to-end product transparency solutions provider in the market, because that's the way we view the problem, from reporting all the way through education and marketing and sales. So the way that I like to start telling the story about product transparency, and we've seen the trend evolve year over year. Last year in 2019, we'd seen it evolve from an early stage requirement to a specification requirement, and we saw really in 2020 transparency moving from a specification requirement to becoming a construction requirement for those really committed to building high performance buildings. And what it boils down to is that environmental performance and material health are new performance criteria. That's all they are. They're about measuring a different kind of performance that sit alongside the traditional performance criteria: functional performance, health, aesthetics, safety, and they're now part of the definition of high performance building. And so doing an LCA really for the manufacturer and the material assessment, first and foremost, is for them to gain insights into the environmental impacts and material health over the life cycle of their products, to then be able to take that information to drive improvements and be able to report to the market what they learned from doing the LCAs and material assessments and what they're actually doing to improve, where they're demonstrating they really do understand these performance attributes of their products, and they're part of their product development process, their company goals, and ultimately that's what builds a credibly greener brand. People want to do business with brands who really are invested in not just doing reports, but actually doing the reports to understand what they mean and drive that information back into product development to bring credibly greener products to market. And that's the continuous improvement loop and the optimization component that is now really being looked at closely, and now even being rewarded in several of the green building rating systems. So, actual performance matters, and you can't manage what you don't measure. So people say that about a lot of things, and it is very true in this instance. So a little bit, just so you can visually see the evolution of the industry. We launched the Transparency Catalog at Greenbuild in 2016, and there were only 350 brands in all of North America who had invested in either EPDs or an early material ingredient disclosure. And at that time, we made the decision that it was kind of enough to kind of scrape together a little pile of manufacturers to start a catalog, with the sole purpose of trying to reward those manufacturers for now going the distance, spending the time, the money, the difficulty, the risk even of this type of disclosure, and to make a place where just those manufacturers and just their products with disclosures could be found by the most motivated, most targeted industry professionals really committed to building high performance buildings. And that's what we've been doing for the last 5 years, is continuing to track the industry, add the manufacturers as they invest in product transparency, so that we can present to the design and construction industry the entire universe of manufacturers who are making the commitment to be transparent, so that you in return can select and specify their products and keep that virtuous cycle going. I like to pull this out just to show people that, you know, when we launched the catalog in 2016, the intent was always that it would grow up to become a specification tool, which it is today. And you can even see that this very early sketch looks a lot like the transparency catalog today. This was always our plan, but we had to wait for the industry to evolve so there would be enough manufacturers across enough master format divisions and sections for it to become a useful specification tool. So you can see that in 2017, so about 14 months after we launched it, there was really an explosion of investment in transparency. It went from 350 brands to 900 plus brands in industry organizations. And then by another 12 or 13 months later, you know, the adoption across brands had slowed somewhat, but the number of products and the number of disclosures that those brands were investing in had really exploded in that time frame. And so we were finally able to start adding the specification tools, the master format filtering, and we were able to add every EPD in North America because there was no place where those had been aggregated. And so finally, we were able to start delivering on that promise of a specification tool and really making it possible for the design and construction industry professionals to do in minutes what might have been taking, you know, days, weeks to be done, which is to find 3 manufacturers with similar products in each master format section to put into the project specification for a bid. Now, literally, that can be done in one click. And so, you know, we really saw over the course of 2019 the continued push for more disclosures, more brands, because you know, we really saw this continuing. We decided to move the master format filtering option up into kind of one of the first things that people see when they come, so they could start to think about, okay, I'm going to access content that way. Although we're always committed to having every single brand on the front page, because earlier in the evolution of transparency, people would say, well, you know, there aren't enough brands investing in transparency yet, so there's no way to even think about doing a whole building with high performance products. And what we wanted to always show is visually, look how many brands there are. And that's the reason why I have this miniature screenshot to show that it's many, many, many screens of manufacturers, and that people can still scan and find brands that they like just by kind of scanning, as well as now being able to find things in more automated ways. And so in September of last year, 2020, it was up over 1,500 brands, and that's when we introduced the next version of the catalog, version 3, where we added a whole bunch more functionality and really enhanced this toolbar of searching and filtering combined that allow people to use it in really any way they like, depending upon the task at hand. You can just do research across a whole division. You can select a section that you want to be finding brands and products in. You can combine that with a particular brand, so you can very quickly, if there's a brand you know in a master format division that you're working on, and you just want to see what they've got in that division, you can do that, and all in one click. So this was a really big release for us, and continues to deliver on our commitment to revolutionize green building product selection and specification, so that manufacturers can grow revenue and brand value for their product transparency investments. So that's, we really are advocates for the manufacturers, because if their products don't get selected and specified, they're going to stop being transparent because it's expensive, risky, and time consuming. And if they're not getting value from the market for doing it, then it's very likely it could stop. So the way to do that is to radically simplify the delivery of this information and make it super easy for the building construction professionals to find what they're looking for, and again, to make the investments in transparency really pay off for the manufacturers. So in January of 2021, sorry about that, the number of manufacturers decreased a little bit because some of the manufacturers had let their disclosures expire for more than several years. So our data team stays on top of that and ultimately curates the data so that valid disclosures, as well as disclosures that may have expired in the last year or two, are still available, because the rating systems allow the submittal of disclosures that have expired if the product was purchased during the validity period of the disclosure. So that's why you might find some expired disclosures in the catalog. But what we can't tell you, the number that we can't tell you, and nobody else can either, is the number of products that are covered or represented by the disclosures that have been created. We know that there's tens of thousands of products, but the reason that we don't know is because a disclosure can cover more than one product. It can cover one, it can cover 10, it can cover 50. We even worked on an HPD for a manufacturer a few years ago where one HPD covered 1,200 products because they were all made the same way. They were just stylistically different. And so disclosures have never really been great at allowing the manufacturer to stipulate at the actual product, or even at the SKU level, which disclosures go with which products. But at the end of the day, people are not looking for to specify disclosures. They're looking to specify products with disclosures. And so with that in mind, we designed the transparency catalog listing to allow manufacturers to list every single product that they have correlated with the disclosure that goes with it, so that people can scan the list. In fact, this is what I wanted to show you. In the manufacturer's listing, a user can scan the master format sections that the manufacturer has products in. They can see what the manufacturer calls their products in that master format section, either a descriptive term or their product brand name. And then once you open that section, you can see every product, and this links to the product page on the manufacturer's website, which should be their single source of truth. We don't believe manufacturers should manage a lot of content about their products someplace that isn't their website. And now the user can see which types of transparency disclosures they have for that specific product, and even get some information about the results of that disclosure right there, so that they don't necessarily have to drill in and review every single one. And what a user doesn't care about, if, for example, this is the same EPD for every sheetrock product in this section, and if this is the same declare label and the same HPD, I'm not sure it is, it might be. Users don't care. They only care that if they specify this product, that's the EPD, that's the declare label, and that's the HPD that goes with it. And so, our goal for this year is to continue to really encourage manufacturers to add their products to their listings. And going back to what I wanted to touch on, so the way we build and manage the transparency catalog is our data team monthly reviews all of the program operators and material ingredient disclosure programs whose disclosures are eligible to contribute to the transparency credits in the green building rating systems that are used. So here's the green building rating systems. We track those pretty closely for changes and updates, and we track these technical program providers. And every time a manufacturer creates a disclosure for the first time, we add a free listing to the catalog that links to the manufacturer's website that tells you the type of disclosure that they have. And we add the master format division and section to that manufacturer's listing. So even with a free listing, they're going to show up in the search results according to the correct master format division and section. So here's a quick spreadsheet that shows you the data as of January 27th. It's in the catalog. So there's 27 master format divisions, 892 sections, which is pretty phenomenal that the industry has gotten that robust that it would be probably not very many master format sections that wouldn't have products for high performance buildings anymore. Manufacturers in the catalog can have larger ones, often do have products in more than one master format division, which is why the manufacturer count is greater, because some of them are showing up in multiple divisions. The unique number of manufacturers is roughly 1,500 right now. And then the combination of actual products plus the data points of disclosures. Today, we have over 10,000 data points about products across these manufacturers and master format divisions and sections. But like I said, we really don't know the number of products that all the disclosures cover, which is why we can only say today there are likely many tens of thousands of products that are covered by one or both types of disclosures. So now the content in the manufacturer's listing with their products correlated to disclosures organized by master format serves as the fuel for the search results. And so now when a user goes in and uses any of the filters, and we're going to look at a quick demo, either master format, brand, rating system, a few others, in one click, they're going to get every brand who meets those criteria, and organized first by manufacturers who are featured brands, manufacturers who have added their products in their standard listing. So these are the only two types of transparency catalog subscriptions that manufacturers pay for, and it's where they add their products. All the others are either free listings where a manufacturer has EPDs or a manufacturer has material ingredient disclosures. And so because we don't know which products go with which disclosure, what you're going to see in that column is simply the name of the disclosure and a little bit of information about, in this case, the scope of the EPD, whether it's industry average, yes or no, the expiration date. But this doesn't link to anything other than the manufacturer's website and the EPD. These featured brands and standard listings link to the product information, specifications, and a whole bunch more information about the manufacturer. So the most content, the most and best content in any master format division and section always shows up first. So I'm explaining this so that you're going to understand what's happening in the use of the catalog and what the analytics are showing us in the dashboard. So a quick view of what happened in 2020 in the transparency catalog. Even though it might have not been a growth story for the world, it turned out it was a big growth year for the transparency catalog, where every metric that people track in web analytics went up. The number of users, the number of page views, session times, everything went up. And when we launched the version 3 of the transparency catalog with the enhanced master format filtering and search, we really saw a pretty significant increase in more activity, because now with more tools meant there's more that people could do. And so what the stats show us, and again, I'll show you, is that people are coming to the catalog, they're staying, and they're getting a lot done. And the important thing is they're getting a lot done in a short period of time, because the session times aren't getting longer, but the activity count is really escalating. So that means we're actually doing our job. We're delivering tools that make it easy for people to get stuff done, so it doesn't take them a long time. And we had one manufacturer who was in the beta period testing the analytics dashboard, and I pointed out that session times had gotten a little bit longer, and typically people think, oh, that's a good thing. He said, well, that's not necessarily a good thing for us. He said, you know, we want people to get in, get out. And I said, well, that's a really good point. And, you know, if we really look at the data, that's kind of what's happening. So, you know, we changed the design of the front page, directing people in through the filtering and searching bar, and less direction towards their listing page. And so up until that point, when we'd review metrics with manufacturers, page views was an important metric. But now, with the new tools and the newer design of the site, page views becomes a less important metric, because now what we're able to do is show the manufacturer a more robust view of activity and how much visibility their brand is getting in the context of the master format division and section that their products are in. And then there's context for the importance of the master format division and section by looking at what percentage of people overall are coming to the catalog and then are looking at a particular division and section. So it's really a big picture down to a very specific view. We're giving total usage, master format division and section usage, the number of times a brand shows up in search results, still tracking page views, which is important, and then even tracking clicks and downloads of individual content, so manufacturers can see what people are interested in. But what we're also showing the manufacturers how people are getting there. Are they searching and finding the content? Are they going to the manufacturer's listing page and finding the content? And we made the decision that we were not going to share just the manufacturer's analytics with the manufacturer, but we felt as industry analysts and trend trackers, we have a lot of data that we didn't feel we should keep to ourselves, because our mission as a company is to drive growth in this industry. And so we felt the best way we could continue to contribute to driving that growth was by making everybody's data available to everybody. So every manufacturer can see how much visibility their competitors are getting, but they can also see what kind of visibility and usage are leaders in other sectors getting, and learn from them as well. And a number of the manufacturers in our beta program, when we asked them, you know, is there any data that you're concerned that we would share with somebody else that you wouldn't want to have happen? You know, they kind of thought about it and said, well, not really. You're not sharing any financial data. And they said, we think the upside of being able to see what others are doing is much greater than disclosing anything that we're doing. And they said, you know, bottom line is every year we have to write budgets and get those budgets approved to continue to invest in transparency. So now they said, what you're providing us is actual data that we can use to make our business case about why we need to keep investing. We can see what other people are doing. We can see what people who are successful, what are they doing, and be able to bring that data to the table to make that business case. And so we were pretty psyched that that was the immediate value that people perceived, and was really right on. So people ask us, manufacturers ask us, when we talk to them about adding their products, well, who uses the transparency catalog and how do you get them there? And so here's a little bit of information about that. Who uses the catalog and how do we get them there? Well, what Google Analytics tells us is that in the past year, there have been users in over 150 countries, which surprised us because the transparency catalog is for building manufacturers who are selling products for projects in North America. But that's interesting. And we have a pretty robust mailing list that we built organically over time, focused on lead APs. We've built a pretty significant LinkedIn audience. And one of the things that we've done pretty steadily is over the past years, become members of very, very targeted groups. And here's a partial list of those groups. And so when we market a webinar in our Transparency is the New Green series, we promote those brands and the webinar at least twice. So this webinar was promoted twice in these groups. And if you believe the numbers from LinkedIn, you add them up, we're touching in some way over 1.3 million people in the most targeted groups. And we have a reasonable Twitter following. We put a little bit of effort into that as well. But the thing that really, we've gotten very focused on, we've gotten pretty good at is producing webinars in our series, Transparency is the New Green. So last year, we produced 11 webinars featuring 13 manufacturers whose products are in the transparency catalog and 4 industry organizations. And they come on to talk about their brands, their commitment to transparency, what they've learned from investing in the disclosures that they've invested in, and then they talk about the projects that they get used in. So it's really the opposite of a CEU course. They get to talk about all about their brand and their products. I would say we get reasonable registration. We get pretty good attendance rate. The stats that were very interesting to me, and we got an email from YouTube on December 12th, shows that these webinars have a pretty long tail, that they were viewed over 4,600 times, and a view in YouTube is counted as when a video is played for 30 seconds or more. And then, almost 20,000 minutes people spent watching our videos, which says to me that this is pretty interesting content to a segment of people who really care about learning about this content and these brands. And so when people ask, well, who uses the transparency catalog, we say, we can't tell you for sure because there's no login. And again, from day one, we were really committed to being transparent. People are sick of signing up for accounts to use web tools. Once you give away any kind of user information, it's being used somehow on the back end. And we don't need user information to deliver a great tool that meets our mission and objectives. But manufacturers who we're working with to add their products, they want to know, obviously, and their marketers want to know. And so the way we know who's using the transparency catalog is by who comes to our webinars, because if you're here, then you registered and you saw the question that we asked, if you've used the transparency catalog, is it a useful selection and specification tool? And we've given you a couple options to answer. And when you leave, you're going to be asked to answer some questions if you care to, it's optional, but we're going to ask you the same question again. Now that you know more about the transparency catalog, we're going to ask you again, would it be a useful selection specification tool? And the top two answers are, absolutely, I already do use it frequently, or I will use it frequently. So what you're seeing here is an example list of companies and the titles of the people who attended one of the webinars, one or more of the webinars last year, who responded one of these two ways. And what I like about this list, and again, it's a representative list, is it shows the different types of companies, from small to large, from A&D firms to construction companies, consulting firms, high, senior level people, coordinator people. So it really is a very kind of egalitarian utility tool for pretty much everyone who's part of the design build process in some stage from start to finish. So now that you know how we get people to the catalog and who they are, let's look a little bit at last year's performance and what happened. I was interested to see what happened in the first several months of the shutdown, and if that was really affecting catalog usage. And so we pulled this report looking at February 1st to May 15th and comparing it to the previous date range, and to find out that, yes, there was a significant increase in returning users. New users was way up, and sessions was, edging up on a 40% increase in sessions. Now, sessions is the Google Analytics word for visits. So visits and sessions is the same thing. So it counts each time a new user or a returning user comes and uses the catalog. That's what a session is. And so you're going to see what I'm building towards is that what we've been doing purposefully is building a very, very targeted set of users who are the most targeted and motivated users to select and specify high performance products. And what you're going to see is that not only has there been a significant increase in users, the amount of activity, the number of sessions, and what they do when they come to the catalog is exponentially more. So more people are coming, but those more people are doing a lot more when they actually come. So then I wanted to see if the trend persisted, and so we compared the last five. I pulled this report, I think, in November, so it was the 5 months through November compared to the first 5 months. And yes, that trend was still ongoing. There were almost 30% new users still. Sessions were up 33%. And keeping in mind that these analytics mean it was 33% up over the 37% it was already up in the first date range that I'd pulled. So notice now the only metric that's gone down is pages per session. And that's really interesting because that now correlates with the story that I was telling you earlier about when we launched version 3, where we put the toolbar, the filtering and searching toolbar at the top of the page, and now encourage people to do more with the tools that we provided. So you can see, here's that date right about there. And look what happened in the subsequent weeks and months after that, compared to earlier in the year, which already was up over the previous year. And while pages per session went down, what we were able to start tracking was searches and downloads and other metrics. And so people were doing a lot more searching. They are doing a lot more searching than just looking at pages. And so we're able to track both of those metrics, and we're starting to see some correlation between searching and clicks and downloads. It's still a little bit early to really understand what all the data means. But I'm just showing this report because page views were also up. It wasn't like page views went down. But if we zoom in for a minute on September 14th, when we launched version 3, as I mentioned, there were over 1,500 brands, 25 master format divisions. So there's already been in 4-5 months manufacturers and 2 more master format divisions that have been added to the catalog. Another 50 or so master format sections have been added in the last 4 months. And we only add master format sections and divisions to the catalog when a manufacturer has products in those divisions and sections. So you're never going to get no results in the catalog. They're only there if there's actually content to display. And so, our commitment was deeper and more useful integration of partner data, new tools to make it even easier to work and get what you need to get done fast, get the best results. And so here were the list of things that we announced were in that release, with the master format filtering and search being the top thing. We introduced several new filters. We had finished the Declare API integration, and they'd recently added all the Living Product Challenge certifications. We've added more 3-part specs. Transparency catalog is now an option in the GBCI's Better Materials platform. We announced that we had built more detailed usage analysis. We didn't say much more about it because it wasn't really ready for prime time yet. We're able to offer manufacturers unlimited updates to their listing because so much of the content management is now automated, and we've also started to track PCRs in development in the PCR catalog, not just ones that are completed. So this detailed usage analysis is what we're making public now in the form of the Analytics Dashboard. So a couple things that we did in that release: we pulled out optimization credits from Lead and Well, because people want to be able to come in and find products in any master format division section that will contribute to those credits. So we've made that easier to do. We also added this disclosure types filter because we found that many designers and building owners are no longer going after the building certification necessarily, but they still want to design to the requirements. And so rather than driving product selection by finding products that will contribute to transparency credits in those rating systems, I think people have started to develop preferences for different disclosure types. And this way they can find manufacturers with products with these different disclosure types in any master format division or section, or they can just don't have to use the master format selector. All of these filters can be used independently or in conjunction with any others. By applying more filters, it simply reduces the results that are being displayed to help people, again, quickly get down to the stuff they want to see. And so this is the introduction to the Analytics Dashboard. It's now included in the annual subscription for all manufacturers. It doesn't cost more, it doesn't cost extra. We haven't increased the annual subscription price. We feel that as a SaaS software provider that we need to continue to provide value to our manufacturing customers year over year, so they will continue to subscribe. And this is data, this is information, it's data that we've turned into information that we think will help them in their business. So the metrics that we are sharing are total metrics. So all performance metrics. It's real time, so you can set any date range. They can set any date range they want. You can also drill into geography. Where are people coming from? My favorite report is the master format search, and I'm going to show you this live. In any date range, you're going to be able to see which are the most popular master format divisions, and then which are the most popular master format sections. So this is the number of searches actually being executed on those divisions and sections. We also track keyword search. We were interested to see how people would use keywords in contrast to master format, because we thought that maybe enough, especially designers and architects, wouldn't understand master format well enough to use it. So we thought that people would use product categories or product group names for searching. And you'll see that some do, but it actually turns out that people are still using keyword search more for searching by brand, which is fine, you can. And then we track the number of times a brand shows up in search results, the number of times a brand's page is viewed, and then the number of clicks and downloads that each brand's content is getting. And so you can again tell it's kind of this big picture story, the total amount of traffic coming to the catalog, where they're coming from, and then which master format divisions and sections are most popular. So it's, what are people coming to the catalog for? Where is most of the activity happening? Because now the manufacturer has some context for the visibility that their brand is getting. And context is everything, right? If we simply were to report the results of these three things to a manufacturer without any context, then how would they know if it was good or bad? The number could seem big, the number could seem small. They don't really have a way of evaluating. But by providing the content this way, they literally can figure out, of the total number of people coming to look for products in that master format section in a given date range, what percentage of those people saw my brand and ultimately interacted with it by going to my page and or clicking and downloading content. Now, before I go to the demo, I want to do a quick tutorial because we don't expect anyone other than people involved in digital marketing to really understand web analytics. And so a lot of terms get used when talking about web analytics, and sometimes a term can be used in a way that isn't necessarily explicit, or a term can be used to mean something that's real but not necessarily important. So this is what I kind of want to drill into a little bit. And I talked about this earlier, and you can do a web search on web analytics. There's a zillion pages of content. I thought this one was pretty nice because it kind of broke it out, but it starts out by saying, what a visit is. It's the one piece of information you really want to know. So visit is the same thing as session. Google Analytics calls a visit a session. So a visit is an individual visitor who arrives at a website and proceeds to browse and do a bunch of stuff. So this is that's the most important piece of information. How many visits? How many sessions? Then a unique visit is just separating a one-time person versus a multi-time person, that they've come for more than one visit. Page view, that's each time somebody looks at a page, it's get measured. It's also called an impression. In the old kind of advertising days, they used the word impression. But here's the word I really wanted to take the cover off of, and it's this word hits. Notice how they say the real black sheep in the family. So the word hits was very popular in the 90s when the internet started to become a thing. And you would hear websites say, oh, we're getting hundreds of thousands of hits. But let's be clear about what a hit actually is. A hit is a technical term that counts and refers to and counts the number of things that are on a web page that gets downloaded when the page loads. So it's a piece of text, it's a graphic, it's a button, it's a photo. It's everything that's on the page. And so if a website is photo intensive or has a lot of content on the page, every time a page downloads, it's going to have a lot of hits. So here's a nice little formula that they said, okay, look, if you take an average visit, so a single visit, one time somebody comes, and maybe they look at 3 pages. Now remember, in our analytics, page views was people were looking at 2 to 3 pages, so it was exactly this. They said, okay, that's about 45 hits in one visit or session. Okay, so what does that mean for Sustainable Minds? Just focusing in on that, a hit doesn't mean a visit, it's very different, and we're going to use this formula. And so here's the direct analytics from Google Analytics looking at users and sessions over 2020. So there were over 40,000 sessions. So if we multiply 40,000 sessions by 45 hits, that would mean in 2020, there were close to 2 million hits on the transparency catalog. Well, it's a big number, but it doesn't mean anything. It's not useful to a manufacturer, it's not useful to us, it's not useful to anybody, but it sounds like a big number. So I'm putting that out there because you want to be, if people are asking for analytics and now you really want to start understanding what they mean, this should give you a good basis of how to evaluate what you're hearing. Okay, so here I am now, I'm in the analytics dashboard, what you've all been waiting for, and we just added this new chart this week, and we're still tweaking it. So I'm going to run you through these analytics pretty quickly. So here in this metrics overview, and I just logged in, so we're going to send a login to all of the manufacturers who have products, so they'll log into their account. And on the first page, they're going to set this date range. So I preset it. So from September 1st through the end of the year, just looking at 2020. And in that date range, there were over 7,000 users, 15,000 sessions, 18,000, almost 19,000 searches, almost 40,000 page views, over 12,000 clicks and downloads, and an average session was about 5 minutes. And what's interesting to see is that we launched version 3 on September 14th, and you can see that page views are still super popular, as is searching, but now you can see page views starts to taper off a little bit, and searching kind of ticks up and starts to remain persistent. But it's interesting to see that the clicks and downloads are tightly correlated to the number of searches that are executed. Well, so what we don't know yet, we don't have enough data, haven't analyzed it, so wait for the next trend report. We're going to figure out if searching does in fact lead to more direct interaction with the brand, and we'll get back to you on that. And then you can click in and find out where are people coming from, and looking at stuff. And by the way, this is all Google Analytics data directly from our Google Analytics feed. We're using a tool called Data Studio. So there are some limitations of the Data Studio application. And one of those limitations that's kind of annoying, so I'm just telling people up front, is that the date range doesn't stick from report to report. So I always have to go back and reset the date range. to whatever date range I wanted to view. And so I just reset it. Sorry, I just reset it to, again, the last few months of 2020. And now we're here at the master format division and section report. And what you're going to see is that Division 7 and Division 9 are kind of always neck and neck for the two most searched divisions. And that's because they're the largest divisions in terms of the number of manufacturers, the number of sections, the number of products and disclosures. So it's not surprising that it falls off pretty quickly. And then you can see which sections are getting searched on the most, and all of these views are sortable. You can change whether the default is greatest to least. That can always be changed. You can also sort by section. So if somebody wants to just click through and get to their specific section and see what's happening, then they can see that. And we keep track again of the total searches that are getting run in that date range. Here you can see keyword search. See, now it's just defaulted to the last 30 days, which is what the default is. And you can, if you glance at the keyword searches, you can see that they're mostly brand names and not too many category names. You can see a few times of wall base or paint, roller blinds. It's a little bit interesting. And then here's where it gets more interesting. If we look at the brand search, just by default in the last month, you can see that USG, GAF, and Owens Corning were the brands that showed up the most in search results. And just again, to remind you, most of these brands in the top part of the list are brands that have added their products. So they're gonna show up most of the time because they've added their products, and when people are searching on a master format division, they show up first. And then a manufacturer can go search on their own specific brand, and now any manufacturer can do that for any brand, and all of these reports are downloadable. Same thing can be done with page views. Everybody can see the total number of page views for each brand, and then again set the date range and look at each individual brand. And then we've got finally the clicks and downloads report, where you can see again which brands are getting the most clicks and downloads. You can filter for an individual brand, and then the manufacturer can even export the report. And what they'll be able to see literally is where users are coming from, whether they're searching to get to their content or going through their listing to get to their content, and then which disclosures are most popular, which pages. And so there's a lot of interesting trend information that we're learning from looking at brands who have added their products but are not necessarily name brands. They're getting more clicks and downloads through search versus brands that are name brands and have added their products. They're still getting a lot of activity through their listing, but also in search. So it's very interesting data that we're starting to be able to take a look at more efficiently, and now making it available to manufacturers who add their products to the catalog. They'll get the same access and be able to analyze the data in a way that's useful to their businesses as well. So that brings us to the end of our webinar today, and I wanted to thank you all for spending the time with us. This webinar was recorded. You will get a link to the recording, so you've already seen that we care deeply about people having access to the recording. I can send you a link to the deck. You let me know when you exit. And otherwise, we look forward to having you at webinars in the future, and manufacturers who have been on this call, we look forward to hearing from you about adding your products to the catalog. So thanks a lot and have a great day.